Welcome to the Rooted Warriors, the podcast where the bonds of sisterhood are not just celebrated, but explored through laughter, tears, and everything in between. Join me and my two dearest friends as we dive deep into the roots of our own friendships, sharing stories and challenges. Whether you're looking for inspiration, advice, or just a good story, we're here to bring a piece of our sisterhood right into your life.
Welcome back to another vibrant episode of Rooted Warriors, where we dive deep and keep it real. I'm your host, Kat, and today we're journeying through the valleys and peaks of generational wisdom. Buckle up, warriors, because today we're not just stirring souls, we're making history. From childhood tales to life's grand lessons, we're unpacking it all. What shaped the past? What wisdom will pave the future? Get ready for a whirlwind of stories, insights, and maybe a few laughs along the way.
All right, everybody. How are we doing this week?
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
you got anything new going on there, Mommy?
I've been working a ton. I've been working on retraining workers up in my copper store. I got a new kitchen manager I'm working on right now. Katie's getting really close to popping
Miss
here.
Charlotte.
I know.
Oh,
Little Lottie's going to be here with us very soon.
Yay.
So I was actually doing the grandma version of nesting today. I tore apart the house.
Was
I
it as
love
bad
it.
as the mommy version?
I think it's worse because now I know what we're stacked against, right? So I'm like going through all the cabinets as if she's one, like she's just going to be born, right? And I'm already worried about chemicals. What am I doing?
Well, you never know when that'll be. So
Right. So, but it's been a good week.
She
We had
is
a great
Lily,
Memorial Day.
and she may be very smart.
She might be a pain in the bottom as well. That's another indication that she's a
Are
Willie.
you insinuating her mother was a pain in the bottom?
She was terrible. She was rotten. She was so rotten to the core.
It'll kind of be like first-time mothers versus second-time mothers. So it'll be like first-time grandmother spaz, and then second one, it's like, put that down or eat it, whatever.
You'll
Remember
learn
when
either
you
way.
would clean the pacifier every time it fell, and then by the time your third kid came around, you're like, whatever, you lick it off. And
I was
give
just
it
saying,
back
just
to
shove
them.
it in your mouth and shove it back in there.
That's how I was. I don't know. Maybe normal people wash it off on the third one. I don't know. I was just surviving. I was in survival mode without my children. Too.
Absolutely.
So what about you ladies and Richard? How's everybody's week been?
I've been good. We went to Big Trees with my mom.
One of my favorite
We
places.
took her there. I think I wore her out on a hike, but it was so much fun. We got some good pictures and took in some nature and stuff. She just left yesterday back on the Amtrak all the way back to, she lives in Lake Isabella. Wofford Heights is where
I
she
feel
lives.
like we need to take a trip there.
Yeah, should we?
Let's go see Mom.
I know,
like
right?
I
Isn't
love
there some
that.
exciting things you can do there, like whitewater rafting and stuff?
Oh, I mean, I just want to hang out by the lake. I don't need
You
to.
don't really want to go whitewater rafting. That's
No.
not it. And then my son graduated. Noah graduated this last week.
Congratulations.
Yeah, he was a senior. Oh gosh, it's
Was
so
it emotional?
Always
Oh, God.
emotional.
Xavier's senior year, I cried the entire senior year.
Really?
I was a
Because,
mess.
like,
in
it's the
preparation for it.
No, I was just a mess.
It's the first of the lasts, and it's like it hits you just like one after another. This is the last time I'm dropping him off. This is the last practice of football. This is the last lunch. Whatever.
It is.
It was.
It was very emotional.
Yeah,
for me
it was.
too.
I guess I'm just not smart enough to be there. I was just like, okay, we're done. Now
I don't know if
babies.
it has to be- Next.
I know. Who's next? Gina and I are a little bit more sentimental.
So what about your
week?
week, Gina? I know you had a rough week.
I did have a rough week, and I turned it
happened?
over to God.
Oh, well.
Definitely,
better.
I am not mentally capable of talking about
Who
it
is
without
equipped to talk about something?
not
That's
not
all
me.
right.
Not
When
me
you're
right
ready.
now.
When you're ready.
So
you'll
my
talk
sister
about it.
had an event happen in her family that
Yes.
will eventually talk about.
Yes, I
but
did.
until then, it's just been a very much a
Yeah. So I've
rocker.
gone through a plethora of emotions. I'm in my angry stage right now.
Oh, hey.
So it's
At
probably
least you're
best
feeling.
not to talk about it.
probably.
I'm healing
Good to
from
know.
my surgery, which is better. I've not had to take any pain medication.
So you're there
I'm
mentally,
there.
right.
Today I'm here. The last couple times haven't quite been here.
Apologies to the listeners. The last couple episodes.
Right. Medicated, but I'm full blast this week. So I've
Sweet.
happily
Welcome back.
probably been off
Welcome back.
pain meds. Yeah. So
And
I'm
then
doing
we
really
have a
great.
guest today.
I hope you guys are ready for something truly special today. because we have our very first guest here on Rooted Warriors. He is a true master when it comes to sharing generational wisdom. He has an amazing ability to weave stories from the past and present. Let's give a warm, heartfelt Rooted Warrior welcome to Richard Robinson. Richard, we are so happy and honored to have you here with us today.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Richard.
I'm so excited.
Me too.
How was your week this week, Richard?
It was passable.
That works for an
That
answer.
works for us. That works for us.
Yeah,
What made it passable?
I'm above the grass.
Wow.
Oh, that's a good start.
Right?
I love when I wake up in the morning.
Right. Thank you, Jesus.
Yes, thank you, Jesus. I love it. Every single time it happens. It's like magic.
One more day.
Yep.
So, Richard, just so you know, every week we do a This Day in History. So this day, May 29th in 1765, Patrick Henry gave a historical speech against the Stamp Act. He answered the cry of
Treason.
Treason.
with, "If this be treason, make the most of it." The purpose of that tax was to pay the British military troops stationed in the American colonies after the French and Indian War. But the colonists never feared French invasion to begin with, and they were content and they felt as if they already paid their share of war expenses. The Stamp Act was very unpopular against the colonists. Their slogan was, "No taxation without representation." I think this is generational wisdom, people.
I love it.
Me too.
Yes.
Some of us must be channeling that same courage to push back against what we see as government overreach. How do you girls feel about that?
Absolutely. I mean, history repeats itself.
Seriously.
That's all I got to say.
I'm feeling a little like that. What about you, Richard?
Well, I heard the governor say a few weeks ago that there would be no new taxes. And he smiled when he said
Wait,
it,
is this Governor Newsom?
and that would be him.
Oh,
Was it a crooked smile?
Very much so.
I just saw that we have a new tax, Richard, on gas.
$25 billion.
Unreal.
But that's no new taxes in his book.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
no new taxes.
And that's going to the working man. That's not to the rich. That's
Right.
not, it's to the everyday Joe filling up his tank.
right.
I have an alternate name for him,
What is it? Tell us.
Governor Gruesome.
Yeah, I think that's
I've
a
heard that
popular one. Amongst, many.
Heard that a few times.
Did you know that speech was improvised, by the way? Did you know that he actually didn't write that speech with this Stamp Act, that was impromptu, that was improvised? And he
Patrick
was actually
Henry's,
known for that. Yeah, all of his contemporaries did not do that. But he was known for being a fellow wordy.
It's interesting.
He's only 29 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
At that
Is
time,
that
he was
bizarre?
29.
Yeah, he was 29.
And then what did his career look like before that speech, I
Good
wonder?
grief. You know what's funny is it says that he was a storekeeper and a planter. And when that failed, he pushed his way towards law. I mean, when all else fails, you just go to law.
Public speaking.
Just go into politics. It's
Hey,
fine.
Eric, we're not talking about you, but we're not talking about you, babe.
We're not talking about you. It's okay.
Now it's time for our Get Smart with Gina.
Because I need to get smart.
We
And
all
here
need
we
to get
go.
smart. We all need to get
So
smart.
we're going to
We
get
all do.
smart with a little treason.
Ooh.
A little
Right.
word of the day. I
Word of the
see.
day, right? So
Talk to me about it. What is
a definition
Yeah.
of it is a crime of betraying one's country, especially by killing a sovereign or a president or to overthrow a government. Fun fact, the last time a person was convicted of treason was in 1949. He was a Nazi sympathizer.
Wait. Was he a Nazi sympathizer or did the government say he was?
It takes two witnesses. So I don't know who his witnesses are.
or whether or
right?
not that they were vetted in
Yeah,
any way, shape, or
they were
form.
paid to be paid witnesses. I'm not
Who
sure.
knows? Maybe he really was. Maybe.
Poor Herbert.
Poor Herbert.
No,
Did
I
you-
don't know that I feel sorry for Herbert because I don't know the history of this guy.
And not only that, but the punishment of treason shall be death or life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. And he died in prison, so he didn't get death.
Okay, but let's go back a little bit more. He was convicted in 1949, and when did he die?
53.
He didn't spend very long.
It was 4 years in prison.
I think it was some kind of setup for something else, right?
Well, I mean, we all think this now because, of everything we've been through.
Isn't it always, though? Really?
Yeah.
What about you, Richard? What do you
What's
think?
your
What
thoughts
do you
on
know
it?
about this?
Do you know anything about this?
I remember at the time that Hollywood was really going through a cycle. In fact, Reagan was the president of the Actors Guild, and Nancy, his wife, was accused of treason. And she went to him for help, and it turned into a marriage. So,
well, there you go. Doesn't all marriages start that way?
treason is my husband too.
Looks like we have. That's funny.
Oh my goodness.
This is so great.
Yes.
So it looks like there's only been about 40 prosecutions for this crime, which has resulted in convictions of a handful of those.
And then the way that they used to do it is they used to hang them, correct?
And I think it's a very popular belief that they still do, but looking at that, it doesn't reflect that now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think so. So
I feel like hanging is frowned upon.
Well, let's be clear that if we're wrong, someone please correct us in the comments below.
I hope they do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. If it's still a thing, I tried to look it up very quickly, and it seems like it's death or life imprisonment, but not that those aren't good. I mean, not that that's not, pretty terrible in itself, but I'm just saying.
John Wilkes Booth.
There you go.
Yeah. So we're going to get into our interview with Mr. Richard, and Andy's going to kick us off with that.
Okay, so we're here with Richard, and he's been our neighbor for 6 years now in October. He's been nothing but a father and a family member to Greg and I. We just adore him and Janet. What was your childhood home life like?
It was rough, very rough.
Yeah. I know there's some stories, but I'd love for you to share with us if you're comfortable.
Amazingly, in your backyard across the river, about a quarter of a mile away, was where I was raised. Moved in 1953. My mother married my stepfather at my age of 6. And everything seemed okay for the first couple of years. In 1954, my stepbrother, Max, was born, and everything changed at that point. My stepfather obviously bonded with his son, and I had an older sister, and boy, we were on the outs from that day on. He resented us. Even went as far as to say, if it weren't for the two of you, I would have more money for my own children. So I have a younger sister, and she and I, out of the family of 6, are the only 2 that are still alive. And she and I have a great relationship. My mother was an extremely angry person, acting out, screaming, throwing tantrums, raging. And it was just nerve-shattering, but honestly, that was our normal. We didn't know any better.
Yeah. Right.
So as time went by, I moved in next to a guy that was 4 years older than me. His name was Robert Lively. And we just connected, older brother, younger brother. And I spent the next 7 years of my life trying everything I could do to keep up with him. He was probably one of the best things that ever happened in my young life.
So it was a good influence then. It was a positive.
We were running, doing push-ups, swimming, water skiing.
All the things a boy should be doing.
Yeah, but amazingly, the district that we lived in was a very poor district, and we were the only 2 kids that had a ski boat. So we were the envy of the neighborhood.
Wow. Who drove you guys around on that ski boat?
We did.
No way.
You were the drivers.
No way.
I was 11 years old driving a ski boat.
No way.
Yes, I was.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
You must have felt like a free spirit.
Well, all the guys on the bank, as we skied up and down the river, they just absolutely envied us.
Oh, yeah.
So
That's great. Where were you born?
Porterville, California.
Oranges.
So that wasn't where you were raised then. You were raised in Modesto.
Moved to Modesto in 1950. And then we let me think, we lived in South Modesto. We moved to Ceres. And from Ceres, we had a wonderful thing happen. The people that rented my parents' house took a liking to them and literally carried the papers on the house that we bought across the river from us. And they were just wonderful people. My parents would go to pay the rent, and they would set our whole family down to have breakfast with them. Wow. We were treated like family.
I love
and,
that.
It's back to the village, huh, Gina?
Yeah.
Back to the village.
Absolutely.
Wow. That's amazing. What's the craziest story from your teenage years? I know you're going to have a bunch of them. I need to know, though. This is like inquiring minds want to know, Richard.
I was an ornery kid.
I know. So that's what I want to know. Come on, give us some good
I was
tea.
Flirting
Were
with...
you a ladies' man, Richard?
No.
Oh, you weren't. Okay.
I was flirting with disaster.
Oh, shoot. I thought you were talking
the woman with disaster.
not with girls, but with
my.
danger. I see.
That's a boy thing.
To be accepted by the older boys in the neighborhood, I would do anything that they dared me to do.
Such as?
Take a risk.
I was just curious because I was curious what that meant to you.
Well, down at the river, and when I was 11 years old, I went to summer camp. I got a scholarship, and I met a guy up there by the same last name as myself, Gary Robinson, and he was one of the fastest swimmers around. And what I did, I spent the rest of the next couple of years trying to mimic everything that he did. And by virtue of that, I was, without a doubt, by the time I was 13, 14 years old, I was the fastest swimmer on the river.
Wow.
And
that's the river that's literally in our backyard right now.
That's it.
On the Tuolumne, right?
Yes. So it made me real lippy because I could insult somebody, and if they took off after me and I had a small head start, I could swim away from them and not have to worry about it.
Until they caught you the next day.
Did you fight a lot?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was kind of the way things were settled back then. You'd get in a fight and it was nothing but fists. And usually you ended up after the fight being friends.
Yeah.
So,
it's just working it out then. Right?
Yeah. Just having that release of tension. And
do you think it's different now?
How people fight?
Just how they're able to, like, they are not really able just to bang it out and fight like that without the police or,
because they're
someone
unwilling to
calling.
fight the way that they used to fight,
Exactly.
which is with your hands.
Exactly.
Very
if you would
different.
have used a weapon back then of any kind,
You're in big trouble.
every parent in the district would have been after you.
Yeah.
That's what it should be.
Rightfully
Yeah.
so.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, looking out your home that faces the river, there must be a ton of memories that flood back when you look out there.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Just to,
Why did you move there, Richard? You had big plans. Tell Gina and Mo what you did. And our listeners.
My original dream was to start a kayak business. And I live on a bluff that's about 50 feet above the river. And when I first moved in, the river was running high, and then it dropped really low. And then I got to thinking about how ornery I was when I was a kid. And I'm thinking, if I invest in the kayaks and all of that stuff, kids across the river they're gonna sabotage everything. And we did our share of sabotage when we were kids. And I'm thinking this is going to be a payback. And I just thought, this is not a good idea.
And what ended up happening? Did you not do it then?
No, I did not. It was years. Let me see. I moved in 13 years ago, and I would have been 65 then. And at the age of 70, was the very first time I kayaked down the river. And it is a beautiful experience. It really is.
When are we going to do it again?
I can give you the kayak. And
You're not going with us?
Well, it's only a 2-seater.
You can go with Craig.
Sure.
You would do it.
Sure. Yeah.
What did that moment feel like when you knew you were moving back right there?
That's an interesting story because we had bought our retirement home in Branson. We had bought a new home. And when my wife gets something in her head, to change her mind is just, it's monumental.
And my husband can understand that.
So I get this idea. I want to live on the river. Now, she's got a funny story to tell. She didn't like the house that she saw when she first drove up. But she walks in and sees the river's right behind it, and everything changed.
Richard, we needed to have a garage and 2 bathrooms, and we forewent the garage and 2 bathrooms for the view of the river. It was like 2 bathrooms and garage what?
Yeah, I don't know if you've been out
I
there,
haven't.
but it's
my
it's
house.
magical.
Wow.
You just sit there and you can watch the river, and it's just something happens. You know, it
never stops. It's like no
No.
matter what happens in your life, that river is always flowing.
yeah,
Peaceful.
it is
It is
beautiful.
peaceful.
The river runs through it.
Yes.
Right?
What did you do for a professional career, Richard?
I was in sales from actually 1970 until I retired in 62 at age 62.
What kind of sales?
I went all over the map.
He was in real estate for a little while.
Started off selling Fuller brush, and
Say what now?
What's a fuller brush?
It's for polar bears.
I don't know what the heck
No.
is this.
What? I'm sorry. I was like, I thought she knew what we were saying.
Is
I
this like
said-
tin aluminum siding? I don't know what's happening.
I said Fuller brush.
Fuller brush.
Yes.
I still am clueless.
Okay.
What is
What
it?
is it, Richard?
Well, they had all kinds of cleaning products, brushes. That's what they were famous for. And I was going to college, working on the railroad, and going to school, college, and the railroad, and selling Fuller brush at the same time.
Let's see. What about, have you ever, in your younger years, lost somebody, a family member, somebody close to you, a friend?
My grandfather died in 1961. That hit hard. Grandmother, I think, in 75. Great lady.
What kind of things made her great?
Just a great person. Good people. Christian. She had 51 grandchildren.
Oh
my
heavens.
goodness.
Well, my mother was the oldest of the tribe, born in 1919. And I think that had a lot to do with her personality. None of her brothers and sisters liked her.
So,
It's tough to be the oldest, let me tell you what.
Yeah.
I feel like that is a life well led.
Yes.
Isn't it?
How great is that?
It's crazy.
Well, she
That
got
many
to
years.
lead. She got to lead that many lives. That's
Yeah.
just
51.
because of her.
Yeah.
That's amazing because of her and her husband.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
What a
I love
great
that.
heritage. That's amazing. Did you have children?
2 biologically, 2 adopted, 7 foster sons.
7 fosters?
Yep.
Wow. I look forward to hearing about this.
Wow.
It was an adventure.
Richard
Yeah.
is one of the most inspiring people on this subject, especially.
Wow.
Well, tell us all about it. Tell us about the
Yeah.
biological. Tell us about adopted, foster, everything.
David and Jonathan. Now, there's a joke that goes with that. That was the greatest love story in the Bible between 2 men, friends. I should have named them Cain and Abel.
Oh my goodness.
I guess we can figure out why, right?
They
Fighting
didn't-
happened.
They did not get along. There was 4 years, 4 months difference in their age. And there was just too much space in between them.
Do they get along now?
Yeah, finally.
Good. It just took generations or decades, right?
David comes to me at 22. He never wanted to have anything to do with Jonathan because of the age difference. So he comes to my wife and I, and he says, I don't think Jonathan likes me. I said, you think?
What was your first clue?
I said, give it away.
It's kind of like your boys. Yeah.
So they'll tell you that now they're the best friends, but before they hated each other. That's what came out. I didn't know that. That's what he'll say to you, though. My youngest will tell you. So there must be some truth to.
There was tension there.
Yeah.
I saw it from my house.
Oh yeah.
Did they have the same mother? Both boys?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Man.
Yeah. It's been like 55 years.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, he's been with his wife for 55 years.
So tell us how you met your wife.
I got out of the Air Force in October of 68, come back to Modesto, and Modesto was a completely different town back then. There was no economy after the harvest season was over with. The canneries shut down, the town shut down. Interesting story. More business firms came to town, and they were providing year-round work. And they needed a number of employees. And I was on a sales call one time, and I'm talking to the guy that was doing the hiring way back then. And he said when these cannery workers found out that they had to work year-round, they did not want the job because they called wintertime unemployment, the nickname for it was rocking chair. They could go fishing. They could do anything they wanted. They were getting unemployment through the winter.
Oh, they didn't want to work.
They did not want to
That
work.
sounds a lot like today's youth.
Yeah.
Did I say that out loud? Sorry. That's true.
But when it's been a lifestyle, the airport district over here across the river from us in the 30s was tent city. And a lot of the people that immigrated from the Midwest, the Dust Bowl, and stuff like that, they came out to California, in a sense, with their tail between their legs. They were poverty-stricken.
And they lived there? Is that what you're...
They had tents in the airport district. There were no houses. The gentleman that lived across the street from us, the Benson, Lawrence and Waldo, actually farmed that whole property. And if you go down to the park, there's a slough there. And the slough was about maybe 75 yards from my house. And at one time, they had speared a salmon in that slough that weighed 40 pounds.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
I weighed 25 in kindergarten.
So as time went by the time we moved in, the whole district had filled in with houses. But I would call it a poverty pocket. And I went driving through about a year ago. And on the street that I lived on, Benson, I lived on Benson and Hillside. I was up at the top of Benson. And there was this Mexican family moving out. And I was in my van. And so I stopped and I started talking to him. And I said, I lived here 60 years ago. And he said, what was it like then? I said, it was tough. Mm-hmm. And he says, well, it's worse. It's worse than tough now.
Can I ask you a question, Richard?
Sure.
You talked about the people living in Tent City at that time that came from the Dust Bowl. What did they do, to your knowledge? What did they do to help alleviate that problem?
The only employment was either picking peaches, picking fruit, whatever it might be, working in the cannery.
And were they willing to do that?
Oh, yes.
See, that I think that's the clear difference.
So these are hardworking people. These are people that came here to work.
Here's the clear difference, ladies and Richard, is that nowadays we're allowing immigrants to come over that are illegal.
Right.
And they are taking some of those jobs as well as not working.
Right.
And we have American citizens that are unwilling to work in a cannery and unwilling to pick peaches. because they think they're above that.
Right.
And, my grandmother came during the Dust Bowl from Kansas, and that's the type of work that they did. Their husbands and their men did that type of work, and the women sewed and they worked in the canneries. So I think that's the clear difference there between our generation and theirs.
Great point. Great point. Yeah.
So Richard,
such a big difference then from today.
Oh, I mean, there's
Huge.
so many ways. So Richard, what's the scariest thing that's ever happened to you in your lifetime?
I'm on my motorcycle. And I'm east of LaGrange, and I'm barreling. I ride fast, okay?
How fast is fast, Richard?
I've been up to 130 about 10 times that I can think of. So
Thrill seeker.
That's fast.
Yes, very fast.
So I see these cars in front of me. I'm thinking, I'm going to pick them off, pass them. So I pass the first car, and the other car is probably 200 feet ahead of me. And I think, well, I'll just go ahead and get him too. And so I come up and I pull right up to the side of him, and I look, and I'm running out of road. And I'm thinking, I've got to get around him. I should have backed off and got behind him. I did not do that. And I got on the outside of the lane and cut the corner, and there was barbed wire fences over on the opposite side of the road from me because I'm making a left angle turn. It was a right angle. And I actually threw my knee over the top of the seat. I was explaining this to Greg one time, and he did the same thing on the same corner.
Yes,
And,
he did. He had the same almost fatal wreck.
Yeah. And so I'm hanging off of the motorcycle like this, and I'm watching my front wheel, and I'm running out of road on the other side. And I hit the dirt, and the motorcycle started fishtailing. And I'm thinking, man, I'm toast. I saw myself going through the fence, which would have shredded me. And somehow, some way, I call it the grace of God, I pulled a rabbit out of a hat and drove away from it. And I had adrenaline running for the next 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
How old were you when you had that almost crash?
Old enough to know better.
Right.
Rabbit out of the
And
hat.
did you ever go 130 again after that?
Oh, yes.
Was the rabbit out of the hat the angels following you?
Very much so.
All right. Richard, if you could relive any part of your life, what would it be and why?
That's a difficult question.
Yeah.
Would you?
I'd rather point myself toward the future. I
I like that. That's a
yeah,
good answer.
Yeah.
It's a great answer. So we were talking about when Richard's stepdad told him that he was going to have to join the Army.
He was 16.
He's 16 years old.
The day I turned 16.
That's Cameron's age.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. Can you imagine Cameron?
What
being
triggered
kicked
him?
out to
What
the
triggered him
Army?
to say that to you, Richard?
He wanted to get rid of me, just plain and simple. And he saw that as an answer. He didn't run it by my mother. And she comes storming out of the bedroom at the other end of the house, and she treated him. She said, "You leave him alone until he graduates from high school." So 3 days after I graduated, I'm cleaning the oven, and she's standing behind me screaming. And I'm sitting there thinking, why am I doing this? I've got a diploma. I turned around and I handed her the rag that I was cleaning the oven with, and I says, "Here, take this. Make yourself happy." And I walked away. I was through.
Yeah.
And I didn't see them for 7 months.
Where'd you
And
go?
I went over to a friend's house, and everybody knew my situation. And I told his mother, I said, I'm out. I'm through. I walked out, and all of my clothes were there. Right. And I had worked 2 summers accumulating a wardrobe, and I really had some nice clothes at the time. I walked away from them, but I had broken into my bedroom so many times. If I was outside and the window was closed, within a matter of moments, I could be inside, even if the window was locked. Right. So I had pried it open so many times. And I went back and I got my clothes. I go downtown, and I had a Sunday school teacher at the time. And I was kind of like in a fog. And I stopped by his house, and he says, "You can live in our basement." Wow. Yeah. I had a place to stay. I worked in the cannery that summer. I ended up going to college in 1964. I was a terrible student. My grades were below sea level.
Because you didn't try, or you couldn't?
Attention deficit disorder.
Somehow we can relate.
Yeah. I was just so scattered, I couldn't focus. And
so you couldn't do it. It wasn't that you didn't want to.
It was, for me, it was torture.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's how I felt about school. Yeah. It was torture.
Yeah. And as far as I was concerned, it was somebody else's idea, not mine.
Exactly.
Yeah. And, I've learned in life, and it started at about age 25, to drift into being a student, and just, and...
Why do you say that? Do you think it takes maturity?
Desire. I've got to, well, that was about the time I came to Christ, and about 1972, thereabouts, I'd been a Christian for a year. I got this Harper RSV Bible, and for the first time in my life, I read it cover to cover. And that's an amazing experience, because you've heard these Bible stories all your life. I have, okay? And finally, I'm seeing the progression going through Scripture. And participating in Bible studies. I've been in Bible studies for the last 53 years. Right now I'm doing 4 a week, and it's amazing. I call it the cross-pollination. Even though Greg is a young Christian, he'll share tidbits that make all kinds of sense, and I'm going like, I never thought of that.
Greg is my husband. He's talking about Greg, my husband. Yeah. I just didn't know if the listeners were wondering what he's talking about.
Speaking on that, Richard. So when I grew up, my grandmother was Christian. Mm-hmm. We didn't go to church. My mom was Christian. We didn't go to church. But when the 1989 earthquake hit, we were watching the World Series.
Oh yeah.
And when it hit, I went underneath the dining room table, mm-hmm. and I prayed to God. Mm-hmm. Even though I didn't know about God. Yeah. Nobody told me about God. And I prayed to God that he would save us, mm-hmm. and to keep me safe. Mm-hmm. And so I instinctively knew that there was a God, and that he was going to protect me. And that's that cross-pollination right there.
I think that it's innate.
Yeah.
It's built in us.
Just like we know right from wrong.
Right. Well, I think that my one question would be to people that are not believers is, who do you cry out to? Right?
Well, I'd love to hear what Richard has to say about that.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question, which obviously you've answered that you are a Christian. what role does being a Christian play in your relationships? So not just your relationship with your wife, but with your children, with your friends, coworkers, etc.
The volatility that I had before I came to Christ has been, I can control myself. I used to be an angry, wound up, self-centered. Everything was all about me. And it almost ruined our marriage. I came to Christ. We were married in May of '69. And in January of 1971 is when I gave my life to Christ. Okay. And things really started to change in our marriage at that point. Honestly, I was a jerk.
Was Janet already a believer?
Yes. Yeah. She was raised Lutheran. I was raised Baptist, and we had some of the dumbest arguments you could ever imagine. We got married at the First Christian Church on 1320 L Street. I had gone there before I went in the Air Force. And I was really, at the time, committed to that church and the people there. My music teacher in high school, Mr. Wayne, was like a father to me. And I had a couple of role models like that. And there were families in the church that my parents went to that would purposely take me home on Sunday just to keep me away from my parents. And they knew what they were doing. So if it hadn't have been for those people, I don't know what I would have done.
Right.
Because most of the time I was on my rim, I would leave home pretty much every morning going to school angry.
Yeah.
And to start with.
And the anger comes from somewhere, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I was a super angry child too. I was in multiple fights in school. I was kicked out of school for fighting. And
oh, kindred spirit.
Right? Now, like everything you're saying, I connect with. So where does the anger root from?
Was your stepdad angry? An angry person?
Hostile.
And then so was your
mom
mother?
was, right?
Like beyond angry.
Yeah, they would have arguments. If you go over to our house on the street, I could walk 200 yards up the street and hear them screaming at each other. And
do you feel like you carried that onto your early marriage before you gave your life to Christ?
yeah.
Yeah. Gary Smalley talked about that in a book about how we carry on those bents from our family.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's something that resonated for me before I married Bob, was saying, hey, like my family argued, yelled, screamed, threw things. And Bob's family went into a closet to talk about their arguments, literally in a closet to keep it from the children, right?
How wonderful.
Yeah, right? That's what I thought. And then as I was in our relationship, I realized that he had this delusion to think that people don't ever argue because his parents never argued in front of them. And then mine was the extreme of screaming, yelling, cussing, all these things, right? So they're in the middle is where the real relationship lies. And so, yeah.
So I think that
I would go along with the closet before anything.
I agree with that for sure.
True.
Yeah. So I think that with this being called generational wisdom and then talking about things like this, it makes me think of like maybe your mother, what was her parents like? Yeah. And where it's almost like a generational curse, right? Where it's just passed down and passed down. And like, when does it?
Where does her hurt come from?
Yeah.
Did she have hurt?
Well, she had to be a little mother through 9 different pregnancies. So
she had to grow up before her time. So there's a reason
and
why
she had
she
a lot of
was
responsibility.
angry.
we would go to Porterville, which is where my grandmother lived. And all of the family would be there at certain times. And it would be, in a sense, Grand Central Station. Okay. And I can remember being like 10, 11 years old, and her sisters were throwing barbs at her. And I'm like, that's my mother, you know, and you guys are capping on her, you know.
Right.
And I didn't understand it. I understand it now.
Right.
So
Does it make it easier at all for you to comprehend why she was how she was? Or is it like one of those, we're still responsible for breaking this cycle, not hurting our children, you know what I mean, type thing? How do you navigate that? Or how have you?
I got connected with Dobson just before my oldest son was born, and I read his book, Dare to Discipline. That gave me a path to run on. I had no idea how to be a parent. Just all of the stuff I had seen, and there were times I lost my temper.
As a father?
Yes.
Listen, trust me, we were there with you. I don't know about these ladies right here, but I'll tell you.
I think the first half of, at least for me being a young mother, I only knew how to parent the way I saw my parents parent. And then you get to a point, and that's how I parented my first two boys. You get to a point where I'm in my 30s and now I'm having children when I probably should be. And I parented my second two how I educated myself to parent.
How you needed to be parented.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that happens is we need to become aware.
I always tell my kids, we only know what we know. Right. So we didn't know better.
You parented with what you had at the time that you had. Right.
But I think that the message to the younger crowd is to say, make sure you're educating yourself and being prepared for real parenthood and what that really looks like.
Well, especially
it's not easy.
As much knowledge there is out there now at this time, right? Maybe when we were young mothers, I don't know. I didn't have a cell phone.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. It's like we only parented.
You had to go to the library.
We had, as an example. We didn't really have. This is the era of the no.
Yeah,
I think though you inherently know, like I was talking about earlier, you inherently know certain things. Like I remember, Katie was a terrible child. We've talked about that before, and sometimes I would discipline her too much, in my opinion now. Especially as a 46-year-old woman looking at that 21-year-old woman that was disciplining. And I think, man, all she wanted was my attention. That was it.
Yeah.
But I was busy. I was angry. I was pregnant. There was always something.
And there's chemical things going on, and our own rejection from our own childhood. You know what I mean? There's just so much there. And it's so sad because I say that to Jason, like my first son, we grew up together. I was 24 when I had him, but I was a wild child when I got pregnant. And I in no way, in a sense, should have been a mother, but I dropped it all to be a mom, and I was serious about it, but I didn't have a clue of what I was doing. And in the process, I'm certain that I hurt him. You know what I mean? So
what was in your toolbox at that time?
Yeah.
Right.
I worked with what I had when I had it, and I think Mo did the same thing, and Richard did the same thing, and unfortunately his mom did the same thing.
Yeah.
Right?
And, I think it's saying that, hey, it's okay. We were imperfectly perfect, right?
You took responsibility.
But we have to take responsibility for it and not repeat. So I feel like I was a better parent at the beginning with Jeremiah and Hannah than I was with Katie. And, I think I grew. And I know that you ladies grew with each of your children, and I'm sure Richard did as well.
But Katie's going to be even a greater mother.
Oh, she's going to be such a wonderful mother.
Yeah, because of it.
So looking forward to her being a mother.
It's going to be great to watch.
So, we talked about that you believe in God. What are your thoughts of the world now, Richard? How the world is right this second compared to how you were growing up?
Upside down.
So tell us the ways that you see it as upside down.
There is stuff going on now that if you were to go back 70 years, people would be put in handcuffs and hauled away for the behaviors, the language that goes on television now. It would have never flown in the 50s and the 60s. The 50s were so innocent. Kids ran wild. Up in the morning, gone, riding bicycles all over town. One of the worst things I could hear is, from my memory, is at 5 o'clock or somewhere around that time, your mom would say, come on in, it's time to eat. Our answer collectively was, do we have to?
Right.
You know, we were having so much fun. We could eat leftovers, you know, and be satisfied.
Right.
So the innocence has been stripped away, and our children are exposed to some of the most sordid stuff. And the world thinks it's okay. Nobody. I've done 7,254 rides driving Uber and Lyft. Okay, some of the conversations I hear from the back seat are just mind bending.
Really,
these kids are, even though they've gone to college and all of this other stuff, they're ignorant of history. These people that are demonstrating right now have no understanding of history whatsoever. I don't know if you know this, the word Philistia, Philistine, Palestine, all of those words, they mean invaders from the sea. The Palestinians are originally from Greece. They're the interlopers. The Israelis have been there for 4,000 years. It's theirs. They tried to accommodate and appease, and every time they do, they're murdered.
right.
So, and here you've got educated kids that think they're highly educated.
They're just regurgitating.
Well, they're educated to ignorance is what they are.
Who wrote their textbooks? That's what
Such a
you
great
have to
way to
ask
put it.
yourself.
Yeah. Such a great way to put it, Richard.
Yeah.
Wow.
So if you had to think about, I know you and Greg are so much alike. You say that you're kindred spirits in a sense where you both were raised similar. What is your biggest regret in life if you had to put your finger on one or two, or what do you think?
I wish I'd have been a better student. Like I said, my grades were below sea level.
But you also said that wasn't your fault.
Well, I was just wound so tight. If you put me out on a football field or basketball or something like that, I was as happy as could be. And I wrestled my sophomore year in high school, dislocated my shoulder, and never wrestled after that until I got into the Air Force. I think I was made for wrestling. I won the Mediterranean Championship.
Ooh, that's
my
awesome. I
goodness.
didn't know that.
67. Yeah.
Champion wrestler.
Yeah. I just, athletics, I excelled at. And to me, that was satisfying. I found a lot of positive strokes in doing that.
So not a lot of real regrets then necessarily, just maybe differences you would have liked to handle things a little bit different?
I absolutely adore families that have their act together. It just, I don't think maybe they understand or know what they're doing and how rewarding it is to the children. And I've seen good families. I've seen Christian families that have 4 children, and one of them is rogue.
Yeah.
You see it a lot.
Yeah. And it just defies comprehension because they've got 3 citizens and one that is leaning against the wind constantly.
What was your greatest accomplishment in life, Richard?
Marrying my wife.
Yeah.
I love that.
So I get out of the Air Force. She gets out of nursing school. And she graduates, I think, in September. She comes with 3 other nurses here to Modesto. And one of the girls married off. So get this. There's 4 girls. The rent's $160 a month for the apartment. 2 girls to each room. So when Cheryl leaves, it's $160 split 3 ways. I come along, and the other 2 are guns and knives. They they can see the writing on the wall.
It's going to get expensive around here.
Yeah, it's going to go from $40 a month to $80 a month.
Yeah.
And
You got to hit the road, Jack.
that was the message. But the way that I asked her out was she wasn't even on my radar. I'm walking by her nurse station constantly, and I'm thinking, nice looking babe. Don't go there, because my life story is I've been a clown. I want to see people laughing. I want to have a good time. I'm a teaser and all of this other stuff. So
hold on, Richard. I've been to church with you, and you've introduced me to your friends at church, and all of his friends say the same thing when they find out I'm his neighbor.
What's that? What do they say?
They just go, how could you have, even knowing what you know, they're only joking, but he's a teaser. So they tease back.
All of my friends are teasers too.
Yes, they are. They all say the same thing. It's so funny. So they all tease back and forth.
And we're
You are who
merciless.
you hang out with.
Yeah.
We have a group of guys that hang out together over by the coffee in the morning, and we're together for about 30 minutes. And when somebody's walking by and there's an empty seat, I says, go ahead and sit down. It's guaranteed to lower your IQ by 10 points. So, no, so there's 7 nurses that work the shift that I work. And we would all go out and drink beer after work and go to the pizza parlors and sing harmony. And it was pretty decent. Okay.
Is that like karaoke, but
Yeah.
not?
Yeah.
What?
He's saying he'd go to the bars and sing harmony.
Okay,
Yeah.
so how do you do that?
Pizza parlor.
They would
Sing.
harmonize with each other.
Like
They would just sing together and they would harmonize.
acapella? Just
Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool.
Right?
So I had no connection with any of those nurses. I think they were all married. Okay. But I was the only guy. So one night, Marge Mathiasen says to me,
That name.
Say it again.
Marge
Say
Mathiasen.
Marge Mathiasen.
Margie.
Good old Marge.
Good old Marge.
That is a name for you.
Marge is 40 years old at the time, and I'm 22.
So Marge knows
Wait.
best.
Well, she says, why don't you take out that Stacy girl? And I said, no, I don't think so. I says, I'm too much of a clown. She'd never go out with me,
Right.
I'm just being realistic, So Marge says, well, ask her anyway. So I did. And so I asked her, and she says yes. And I'm thinking, oh, God, what do I do now?
What's next?
Because she was classy, really classy. Oh, and she had a brand new Oldsmobile.
Uh-oh. And a new car.
What color was it?
White with a blue vinyl top.
Ooh.
So
Leather top.
Babes with a blue vinyl top.
So when she gets the car, we pass each other in the hall, and she says, well, how would you like to drive my car tonight?
Richard.
Wow.
I know.
This
that
is
was
very
very
racy.
forward. This is very forward of her.
Well,
Was presumptuous, actually.
What year was this?
1968.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
She was flirting.
She was, Richard, do you want to drive my car?
Do you want to drive my car
She might have been
tonight?
hammered off all the beer at the
know.
harmonizing.
She was not a part of that group.
Oh, okay.
That was
Thank
Marge.
you for the clarification.
If she would have been a part of that group, she would have known better.
Right?
She wouldn't have went on
She
the
was a
table with
classy
Richard.
babe, he said.
She was a classy babe. That's right.
So we call her parents, and we say we're going to get married. And her father says, when? We hadn't even set a date.
This is you and the
Janet.
new girl. Oh, okay.
Janet. So it's like about,
Well, you said
maybe?
Stacy.
Yeah, who the hell's Stacy?
that's her maiden name.
Oh, I started to get mad. I was going to fight for
too,
Janet.
Richard.
I was like, Stacy's going down.
You're calling this lady a
I was
classy
wondering
lady.
about-
I
I
was
didn't
so
realize it was
upset.
Janet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so her real name is Stacy?
Janet Stacy.
Oh,
Janet
so Stacy's her middle name.
Maiden name.
Maiden name.
Maiden name. Oh, gotcha. It's her last name.
Yeah.
Always
So
through this
Those
one.
pieces just came
all
together.
the pieces are coming together now.
So we call her parents and say we're getting married. Her dad says, when? And we said, we don't know. And he exploded. Because he had already set his vacation for that year.
Well, you were driving her car. That's half the problem.
Well, he didn't know that.
They never know. They're the last to know.
They're always the last to know.
So he blows a fuse.
Because you didn't know when you were going to get married?
Yeah.
Oh.
So we didn't want to get married in June because everybody else does. So there's a calendar by the phone, and we pick it up and we look at a Saturday, May 10th. And we go Saturday, May 10th. He had to change his vacation.
Oh, was he upset?
So anyway, we pick him up at the airport in San Francisco. I've been in San Francisco 1 or 2 times as a youth. And I'm thinking, we'll take him to the Cliff House.
Oh, Cliff House is so cool.
Yeah.
Love it.
Well, I had a total of, between the two of us, we had $16.
Oh, good luck.
So,
Dad's picking up that bill.
A minimal dinner.
55 years ago, okay? This is 55 years ago.
Okay.
I'm looking at what they ordered. It came to $16.
No way.
Yes, it did.
By the grace of God, it came to $16.
She and I are sweating blood. And after we'd finished and we're getting ready to leave.
That was worth about $144.16 in 1968.
Is that right?
Or $12.
Yeah, and think about
16.
Or I'm sorry,
$16.
$16 in 1968 is worth $144.16 today.
That get you one meal, maybe.
Yeah, right.
Well,
So-
I mean, technically, I gave him.
That's a lot of money back
Yeah.
then. That's a lot.
Well, that's all we had.
So what'd you do?
So we stand up and get ready to walk out, and Frank, 6'5", 280 pounds, says, well, I'm going to pay for dinner.
Thank God. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Mr. Stacy.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Mr. Stacy.
We appreciate you.
Right.
She and I were in a state of shock.
So he blessed the marriage then, or he wouldn't have paid
Well,
for the dinner.
this is funny. She brought me a yellow windbreaker because she'd got each of her boys, Billy and Ronnie, a windbreaker. So now I'm one of her boys, so to speak. So she brought me one. So she's off over on the south side of the Cliff House, and she's talking to her daughter, Janet. And she says, oh, he's just like the boy next door. Have her fooled.
I know.
Oh my goodness.
Richard was a wild boy, and so to be
She had
called
the
the
wool
boy
over
next door,
her eyes.
yeah, right. He did a good job.
Funny baloney.
Phony
Phony baloney.
Richard.
So, Richard, we're talking about generational wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And we were kind of chuckling a little bit earlier about things that our parents used to say to us. Like famous words in my house was, you were going to be up shit creek without a paddle.
Or maybe if you had a brain, you would walk backwards and drag it.
Or if they jump from a bridge, will you?
So what are some things that your parents said? Some things that my parents said I can't probably repeat. Like my dad used to ask me all the time, I don't know what it meant, but he would say, do you have shit for brains?
Oh no, my dad would just say, hey, shit for brains.
Oh,
okay. Maybe that'll put it in perspective for you. Okay.
There's a
Use my
difference-
language.
There's a difference between do you have
And hey. Yeah, right.
So what are some of the things that your parents would say?
Oh, my mother had a lot of Okie expressions, but one of them, if she saw something going on, like if she were alive right now and she were watching TV, she'd say, those people are talking like they fell out of a well.
Fell out of a well. What did she mean by that?
Well, what do you think it is?
That they sound ignorant?
Well,
They fell
Who falls out of a well?
logic is completely shot as far as she's concerned.
Oh, wow.
And, that generation.
So they're uneducated is what she meant.
No, they're stupid.
Oh,
Yeah.
There's a
Or
difference.
stupid.
and stupid is as stupid does. So when we talk about generational wisdom, we talk about our roots and the roots before us and things that are handed down and stories that are told and passed down and where it's been lost. Do you have any generational wisdom that was offered to you or that you have given to your sons?
I had generational criticism. So
Wow. That
From-
was great.
from-
That was a great way to put it.
from both sides, I would do anything I could to elicit something from my stepfather that would say I'm worthy, okay? And I would go out of my way to do something really good. And I would ask him what he thought about it. And his response was usually, well, that's the way you're supposed to do it. So there was never any praise. And I was constantly stroking my boys.
Making sure they understood their value and their self-worth.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. So
I love that.
Yeah. It's important. It's really, so you basically tried to be the dad that you needed when you were younger.
I was clueless.
You still tried though. That's
Oh,
the
yeah,
only thing you
yeah.
had to go off of is
Yeah.
what you were shown that was wrong. Right.
Yeah.
What are your views on today's version of divorce and what's that doing to kids and things like that? And I really hate to even touch on that, knowing that we've all been, not all, obviously me, but to what Miss Gina and I and most of the population has been in and out of somewhere like that. What do we do? And what is the epidemic?
Divorce is a tearing of the flesh, not only the husband and wife, but the children too. They're forced to take sides, okay? Mm-hmm. And it can be downright ugly. I've been in rooms in Celebrate Recovery where the couple split and the wife spent every moment of her life pouring venom into the children, 4 children, to poison the well with their father. And when they see him, they make faces, they hiss.
It's learned.
It is a learned behavior. When my
both
children,
ways, by the way.
absolutely, but you see it a lot in the females, and
it's so
like
bad.
when our kids were growing up, we'd go out to dinner, and I worked, as you guys know, 80 hours a week, 70 hours a week, depending. But when we went out to dinner, I would tell my husband, "Thank you so much for this meal." Kids, what do you tell Daddy? "Thank you very much, Daddy, for this meal." I didn't expect them to thank me. Right. I wanted them to thank their father and respect their father.
That's weird, Mo, because I'll say, "Thank you for dinner, babe." And then the boys in the back will go, "Dad, thank you for dinner."
That's right. It's a learned behavior. We teach our children to respect our spouse and to respect the word of our spouse.
Because even if it was your money that paid for that dinner, it was your husband that
it's
allowed
not my
it
money.
and
It's
made
our
you,
money.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's money that he enabled me to make.
Exactly.
By being with my children.
Right.
If somebody has to be at home.
Right.
Somebody has to be the caregiver to those children.
Right. And if it wasn't for him,
it would be
have
me.
done that.
And he was better at it. Let's be honest. I was really good at hustling and making money, and he was really good at being with the kids. And he was way more patient and wasn't angry and didn't have all the issues that I had that I was going to put on the children if I was stressed out every day with those children.
What a good teamwork and chemistry to go together.
And it was a switch. It was the opposite of what I naturally believe things should be and what I would want for my daughters who were raised differently.
Right.
They are more, gentle and feminine because they had that privilege.
Because they had a father that took that off their
And they
plate.
had a mother that allowed that. And also honed in on them not being trashy and not dressing certain ways and not over-sexualizing them.
Because you kept them out of gymnastics and cheerleading,
dance
and all that, right?
And I'm not saying anything against, and I'm not saying anything against those parents out there that do those things. But for me, I felt like it was over-sexualization of the child.
Compared to how they'd been raised and things like that, you were just like, this is kind of
It's not what I want for my
them.
children.
Right.
It's not what I wanted for my daughters.
I like that.
And, but anyways, no matter what, I always made sure when they were young to show the respect that my husband deserved. to him so that they would mimic that behavior.
Right.
And remember, we were talking last podcast about my do better, not the last one, but the first one was about being more respectful to Bob. And I said, I failed in this. And then this week, because I know we're getting into do better, this week, just today, as a matter of fact, we had a friend of ours that's a landscaper come over, and I was discussing what I'd like to do in the backyard. And Bob came over to tell me that was a really bad idea in front of the landscaper. So my first thought was to shoot him down and be like, no, my idea is right. But I stopped myself and I said, Monica, this is your opportunity to do better. So I said, I strongly disagree with what you're saying, but
if that's what's
your idea? Mm-hmm. So we came to a compromise. And calmly. And, we're both going to win in this. Mm-hmm. And, it's a constant reminder that we need to respect our males
and you learn
each other.
Him.
I want him to respect me in that way.
Well, and he learned about you that day. He got to know what it was you wanted. You got to know what he wanted. And in that now and he knows.
Right. But these women that talk down on their husbands, their exes, it's not healthy for the children.
Oh, gee.
Well,
I'm
actually going to step out on a limb here and say that maybe I was one of those women after traumatic relationships and things like that and didn't know how to handle a relationship, a good relationship. Not that I was exposed ever to a good relationship, but when I met Gina's brother, it was very much like,
when we see bad relationships over and over again, we mimic that behavior. Like what we talked about,
stuck in habits.
And we sabotage
future
relationships. Mm-hmm. Not just our relationship with our significant other, but with friends, with coworkers.
With kids, with our mom, children. With whatever. Yeah. No, it's just within relationships in general. It's a pain that we kind of experience and know. And therefore, we just tap 100%. Into it again. And it's silly. I know it sounds silly, but we do.
Well, now we're getting into do better.
All right.
So every week we do our do better. So ladies, let's check in. How did you guys do last week with your do better?
I'm healing. So I would like to say that I was a better patient.
Good.
I probably wasn't.
You're pretty sore today.
Yeah. I'm kind of sore every day, but I'm getting over it. And as far as my last week was becoming a better communicator, and I also don't feel like I hit that.
Mine was to be more affectionate towards Craig and loving that way. And although I thought about it many times, I wasn't as good at it as I should have been. Let's just say that. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and try that again this week.
Oh, redo.
Yeah. Redo.
Redo.
So, but I am going to add gratitude. Showing gratitude to my family, even in the midst of some really difficult times and some decisions that are being made, that I still find the good and the joy and the gratitude and whatever that is, and stay calm and just appreciate where I'm at the moment versus trying to hone in on the negative.
Richard, is there anything that you would have liked us to ask you today?
Or maybe some advice to give like some future generations that are listening right now, that maybe anything that maybe we didn't touch on?
Well, I was 25 years old when I gave my life to Christ, and I've been plugged in for the last 53 years, and fellowship with the church, being there, participating, Bible studies I do 4 a week. The blessings I get from other people, the insights are just, I write them down. They're unbelievable. We were in Monday night Bible study probably 8 months ago. And this guy that has recently come to Christ, we were talking one night about the validity of the Bible. And he had an insight that just blew me out of the water. We were talking about the disciples, and every one of them gave their life for the gospel. All they had to do was say, I didn't mean it, and they could have walked. They had that option. They were eyewitnesses. They saw everything. They reported everything they saw. So when somebody questions the Bible and its validity, 11 out of 11 gave their lives for what they believed.
Yeah. They really did. They truly, in the end, gave their lives for what they believed, regardless of who was bullying them or pushing them or what they had to give up or sacrifice.
All they had to do was say, I didn't mean it.
And
they could have walked.
So Jesus is the answer, folks, in case you didn't get that. Just saying.
In case you didn't catch that.
In case you didn't catch that.
Well, Richard, thank you so much for joining us today for our podcast.
Thank you.
And we'd like to reach out to our listeners. We want to hear from you guys. If there's any piece of wisdom that you got from your elders that stuck with you, we would love for you guys to share that with us. Put it in the message on the podcast. Drop us a comment, anything. We want to keep this conversation going.
Yeah, let's share the love and the info so others can learn and benefit from it too.
Yes. I hope that all of you soaked up all that generational goodness that we got from Richard today. The past has some serious gems that can just totally rock our world. Let's keep those roots strong and our hearts opened. And until then, feel blessed, be blessed.